Today we're going to be talking about produce and how to keep it as fresh as possible for as long as possible. Sometimes we get produce and before we know it, it's already gone bad and we don't get a chance to prepare our meals like we'd hoped to. And we get frustrated and then we abandon the whole notion of getting fresh food. So today we're going to talk about how to increase the longevity of your food by up to a week, sometimes more. So let's get into it. A few simple things you can use are mason jars to really extend the life of your produce. And I typically get the 64 ounce shown here and the 32 ounce shown here. It's about half, obviously, the size of these. They don't cost that much money. They're about $20 each, plus or minus, for a 6-pack of 64 ounce and for a 12-pack of 32 ounce. The benefit with mason jars is they're relatively inexpensive, as I alluded to, and they come with lids that are interchangeable. So if you lose a lid, unlike with like Tupperware or something like that, you can just get a new lid and they're very cheap. So there's no issue of lid management, lid loss, and then having to replace that new lid or jar because you lost one thing or the other, one broke or one got misplaced. So these are great ways to start. And we're going to actually now show you how you can use mason jars in your fridge as an option to keep produce lasting much longer. All right, so what causes food to go bad in the first place? Well, it's a gas called ethylene that is odorless and transparent, obviously, and it will help fruit ripen on the tree. So it's sort of a hormonal signal, if you will, from one fruit to another to say, time to crank up your sugar content. We need to ripen up to be attracted to animals, to reseed and plant. So it's really effective in nature, but not so great when you clump a bunch of food together and have it in your fridge where they're all signaling to each other, ripen, ripen, ripen. And some of the biggest culprits in terms of cranking out ethylene are things like apples and, of course, bananas, which we leave out typically, and most people already know to do that. Apples actually crank out quite a bit of ethylene as well, along with peaches and some other fruits. Food that is particularly sensitive to ethylene are greens and herbs. And so these are ethylene producers, and then these guys are ethylene sensitive. So typically the strategy we like to use is to isolate these guys and absorb any ethylene they may be producing in the fridge if that's where you're keeping them, especially like apples. Bananas, not so much. These are left on the counter. And then isolate these guys from the ethylene gas by putting them in something airtight so they're not exposed to the gas. So soak up any gas these guys emit, say in the crisper, and then isolate these guys for double security from any ethylene gas that may be wandering around the fridge produced by these guys. So that's the overall. All right, the first thing I'll do is put away some tomatoes, and I'll take my mason jar lids off here. I like to use this stainless steel funnel just to keep things easy for me in terms of the tomatoes actually making it into the jar versus onto the table or countertop. You can still mess up there though. So I'll just put these in here, and that will help keep them fresher for longer. So there we go. Put the insert lid on and on the rim. And I like to keep these airtight. Now these are ready for the fridge. So those are tomatoes. I can do the same thing with berries here. Same approach. Just use my funnel to keep things a little bit easier to manage. And then I will let my berries just flow into my mason jar. And there we go. Now I've decanted everything from the plastic containers. So these are going to end up in the recycling, and hopefully they get recycled, but we know that that may not be the case. But now I have these two guys in mason jars, and they're set up to last a good while. So now we're going to put away some greens, specifically the beet tops that I cut. I will just take them, try to get them all aligned the same direction, which is not too hard given I cut them the same way. So just drop one. So I'll take these and nothing special. I will fold them over and I will put them into their own jar, which they just snugly fit into, as you can see here. And now I can use these greens for juicing. Okay, so to wrap up, there's a few things you can do. First, isolate your ethylene gas producing foods, which are in our produce guide, which you should pick up. And we've listed everything out there in detail. You should put these in the crisper isolated by themselves. And remember, don't put yams, potatoes, garlic, onions in the fridge. People do that, but it's a misconception. They don't and shouldn't be in the fridge. Actually, it's not good for them. If you have a mouse infestation, yes, stick them in there to keep them away from anything like that. But otherwise, they should be outside the fridge. But again, isolate these guys, and in the crisper, put one of these charcoal absorbers in each crisper, maybe even a couple, and you can experiment with different media, zeolite, alumina, and charcoal. Charcoal is the easiest, that's what I started with, and you can avoid using one of these commercially available options. Second is actually simply, or actually probably first to be honest, is just isolate your different foods, such as leafy greens, berries, tomatoes, etc., from ethylene gas producers like this by putting it in its own airtight jar. Next, you can go even more advanced by putting a little bit of charcoal media in the lid here and airtight sealing this as well, so you have sort of double protection. And you can experiment with all these approaches for the kinds of foods you buy and see how it works for you and see how much longer your food is lasting using these techniques.
If you loved this video or thought it was okay, tell us below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe, like, and we look forward to seeing you here again.